I want her to see what it looks like to be imperfect. And I don't mean that I'm going to be some wreck out on the street with a bathrobe, like I'm working on my mental health. but, but I do want her to see that like mom's going to fail sometimes. Mom's going to.
Ever feel like you suck at this job? Motherhood, I mean. Have too much anxiety and not enough patience? Too much yelling, not enough play? There's no manual, no village, no guarantees. The stakes are high. We want so badly to get it right. But this is survival mode. We're just trying to make it to bedtime. So if you're full of mom guilt, your temper scares you, you feel like you're screwing everything up, and you're afraid to admit any of those things out loud, this podcast is for you. This is Failing Motherhood. I'm Danielle Bettman, and each week we'll chat with a mom ready to be real, sharing her insecurities, her fears, her failures, and her wins. We do not have it all figured out. That's not the goal. The goal is to remind you, you are the mom your kids need. They need what you have, you are good enough, and you're not alone. I hope you pop in earbuds, somehow sneak away, and get ready to hear some hope from the trenches. You belong here, friend. We're so glad you're here. Hey friends, it's Danielle. I'm so grateful for you tuning in today. It's literally so much easier to do nothing than to do something, and the fact that you made that something my podcast is such an honor. Do you agree with this, Mom? She wrote, Danielle gets deep and personal with this podcast. The stories told are all honest and full of emotion. Motherhood is hard, but listening to this podcast will make the journey smoother. Thank you for that review. Yes, this is exactly what I hope this podcast does. Reassure you that you're not alone. You're not doing it wrong when it's way harder than you ever expected. Encourage you to ask for help and remind you that you are the mom that your kids need. If you have taken the time to leave a rating or review, I really appreciate it. Did you know that I offer a $17 video mini course on managing your little's big emotions? It only takes 30 minutes to get through, and it will flip everything you understand about tantrums on its head. You'll learn exactly what mindsets and perspectives are key in the moment, what to do and what not to do, and how to reduce their frequency in the first place. If you needed this in your life like yesterday, I'll drop the link in the show notes for you to get access ASAP. Don't let another day go by overwhelmed by their big emotions. Level up and carry on, friend. My guest today, Melissa Pennel, has so much wisdom to share from her own experience of mastering sobriety and finding peace through life's chaotic, uncontrollable times. She reflects on her own journey of a traumatic pregnancy and birth, how motherhood has been so much harder than getting sober, and how she finds peace in a world of too much information. Can't wait for you to hear it. Enjoy. Welcome to Failing Motherhood. My name is Danielle Bettman, and on today's episode, I'm joined by Melissa Pennel. Melissa is a life coach, writer, speaker, and podcaster living in Northern California. When she's not making faces at her baby or playing laser with her cats, you can find her writing on her blog or talking about living your most wild and precious life on her podcast, Follow Your Fire, Wild, Purposeful, and Untamed Life. Welcome, Melissa. Thanks so much for coming today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So have you ever felt like you were failing motherhood?
Yeah, definitely. No, I definitely have. So definitely
Welcome
relate
to
to the
club.
title of this podcast.
Yay! Not yay, but yay, because you are welcome here and you belong here. So your daughter Tilly is super close to turning 1. That's so exciting. What a big milestone, not just for her, but for you as a parent. Because I feel like the first birthday party is more for you that you survived.
It's funny that you say that because I had her almost a year ago. I have some new mom friends that are around the same point, and every time their kids get to a year, I'm like, "You did it!" We went an entire rotation around the sun, and we survived.
Yes,
like That's pretty incredible. So yeah, I definitely, and that's part of why with the pandemic and quarantine and the probable, we're not going to have any kind of party or anything. I feel like, okay, so really I'm the one missing out. It's not so much my baby. It'll be really cute for her to
Yeah.
like smash a cake or something, but it's not like she's actually being robbed of an experience because she's a baby. So
Right. It's more for you. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Which is good that she's not missing out right now with everything pandemic wise, but it's definitely hard on you. It's hard on us as parents.
Yeah, yeah. I really have felt for parents of older kids and school age kids because I
Yeah.
can see in my friends, I waited a while. I didn't have her until I was almost 35. So a lot of my friends have kids and they're older, and just watching them and the way things have been difficult during this time with working from home, trying to be teachers and caregivers and all the stuff that comes along with that, it's definitely it's not the same when you have a little baby, right? I already worked from home. I can definitely appreciate the difficulty. And I really like how Brene Brown, Brene Brown puts it. She talks about how empathy isn't like pie. I can definitely like feel for the people who are struggling. And also it is kind of hard. It is hard not being able to have baby play dates or go to like music class or do the
Yeah.
stuff that would have normally done, I assume, around this
Yes.
time. So
Yes. I
yeah.
think in motherhood especially we have a hard time with that comparative suffering of like, well, of course everybody else has it harder, so I should just be grateful and suck it up and it's not a big deal. But everybody's experiencing their own hardships and their own struggle right now, and that's okay to see that, yeah, it looks different for everyone else, but you still have your own things to grieve, and it's important that we sit with that and feel that right now.
Yeah. I just realized something. I feel like I should have my own cake smash just to like have my like get all of my own feelings out. Like the
Oh,
baby can have
I
her
love that
cake.
idea.
I'll have my cake. We'll all feel our feelings. But no, I completely agree. I think that it's really easy to get into like, oh my gosh, it looks so much harder for you guys. But yeah,
Yeah.
it is a weird time. I
It
cannot say
is
that
a
enough
weird
to
time.
myself. Right?
Yes. We all could use a good cake smash.
I know. Just smash me with a cake. Just get it over with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, since motherhood is so new for you, we'll go back a little bit farther to like pre-kid life, and I want to hear like your whole story. So, who were you before you became a mom?
Yeah, yeah. Well, my name is still the same. My name was Melissa.
Feels like an
And
identity shift, that bench.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it does. It does. And what's funny is you already know this about my story, but I'll mention that I'm sober because when we talk about identity shifts, that is the only other time. Well, there's been three things in my life that have felt like before and after, like
Mm,
before this happened and after this happened. One was getting sober because everything changes if you're going to stay sober. And actually, that's not the case. You can be sober and completely miserable, but if you're going to figure out how to live life with tools to keep you somewhat sane and, dare I say, even a little peaceful, you have
mm,
to really like figure out how to look at everything differently. So I could go into that, but
mm-hmm.
that was definitely a before and after. And then just a year after I got sober, my mom died unexpectedly, and she was my best friend. She was,
Mm.
of course, we had imperfect relationships like any mother and daughter, but she was my everything. And having her gone, it was once again like before and after. Afterward, I didn't really recognize myself. The things that worked for me before didn't work for me after, and I was still trying to stay sober. I did stay sober, but it looked completely different.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I bring those events up because I know that when we go through stuff, even stuff like motherhood, that it seems like such a good thing. As I say that, you can hear that and I know you know this, it's one of those events that society tells you you're supposed to be happy. It's like getting
Mm.
engaged or getting married. I'm listing like the big kind of cultural milestones. And so with, getting pregnant and having a baby, I would say that for one, obviously it was a huge identity shift, so much so that, I joke my name's the same, but it really is like before and after.
Yeah.
But I think when we talk about failing, I think the reason I already felt like I was failing back then is that when I got pregnant, and it wasn't an accident, I was like very intentional. And I didn't know if I wanted kids for most of my life. If anything, I leaned toward not wanting them because I felt like if I have them, I really want to be sure. A child doesn't deserve to come into the world and have me not want it or not be sure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing I think I've realized in motherhood is like so much about like we're often never sure, but we can make really conscientious, responsible, which is a super clinical way to say have a baby, but it's like you can make a choice and not be sure. And that's kind of what I did. I was sitting on the fence and we were like, let's try. And we ended up getting pregnant and I was just crestfallen and immediately very terrified. And I felt like I was grieving prematurely this life that kind of like the two imagined paths, like having a kid, not having a kid. And I was looking down the not having a kid path, like, well, guess I'll never drive through the country in an RV selling pies, even though I probably wasn't going to do that anyway. Like,
but now it's
no.
gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Not going to do that. I definitely, it was just this, I don't think I was prepared for the loss, like the loss of one version of my life. And in pregnancy, the part that I think was really hard, and by the way, thank God we're pregnant for 9 months or like almost 10 months, I think it is, because it gives you time, right? To kind of adjust to this idea.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Because as time went on, I slowly started to be like just a little bit, talking about threads of mercy. I had like a thread of excitement. And then around my 20-week ultrasound, we found out and this wasn't like a huge abnormality, but there were some abnormalities in my daughter. And once you have one, there's more testing. And once you have more testing, it's like they're going to find more stuff because they're looking at this fetus really closely. So pregnancy turned very scary for me and very weighted with this almost responsibility. I felt like I can't control this. It's in this baby's in my body and my body's failing because the baby is not developing like air quote correctly. So that must be my fault.
Yeah.
And this wasn't like, I'm a life coach, by the way. I didn't mention that. Like I have tons of tools around mindset and emotional health. And then there's your actual life and these huge confrontations with a fear that I'd never even imagined, right? Like, cause I talk about, I've gotten sober. I've lost my best friend in the whole world, my mother. I'd gone through what I considered really difficult times. And I think being first, not even looking forward to having a kid and then realizing something is off and she might not be developing correctly. I had this total, is it 180? Because I feel like if I say that wrong, like, is it a 360 or a 180? But I had this total flip.
Yeah, opposite.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 180 to, okay, I want this baby so much. All I want. Like part of the abnormality was like she might not make it to term. She had a cord that wasn't developing properly, and suddenly with this possibility that she wouldn't make it, I was so immediately attached to her becoming a human. Like I wanted her so much. It's weird. I wouldn't want to go back. It was a really terrifying time, but
yeah.
At the same time, I see how it really helped me to get into the mindset I adapted, which is like very much positive. I want this child. I want nothing more than for her to be healthy and here. I don't even want to say happy because I don't think the whole point of life is to be happy all the time, but it's like I just want her here to have a chance at life. And short story is she made it and everything was honestly fine, which that's the tough thing about like the medical complex and having a lot of testing is that you can in turn get lots of fear that isn't necessarily going to come true. It's like this extraneous information.
Yeah, that's traumatizing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was. And what's funny is it's not funny, but I didn't really realize it until recently. And it was traumatizing. I think a lot of pregnancy and childbirth can be, especially because a lot of us aren't aware of, I used to work in mental health. And while I'm not a trauma informed therapist, I'm very aware of like big T and little t trauma and how trauma isn't always a plane crash or war zone, or it can be, moments that shift your DNA into a fearful reaction. It can be relational trauma where you witness something really traumatic. And I have definitely in retrospect seen that both pregnancy and birth were traumatic for me. And so I actually started doing something I highly recommend if anyone had a pregnancy and birth that was not, didn't leave the rosiest glow, I guess, in your rearview mirror. I'm doing this thing called birth story medicine. which it's so cool. It's just a coach who takes you through a very informed coach, like with an intentional kind of path through your birth story. And I don't even want to like misrepresent it, because you're not rewriting it. You're not saying this didn't happen or I shouldn't feel like this. It's kind of just giving space to, this was really hard and this changed me. And yes, I got a beautiful, healthy baby. And a lot of people are told, well, you got a healthy baby, so isn't that, it's all okay, right? And it's like, well, sometimes it's not okay. I'm so grateful for her. And I need to have some compassion for me too. And so
Yeah.
birth story medicine, highly recommend it. It's been super helpful.
Very cool. So is that a service that you offer or that you have taken part in?
No, I don't offer it. It's a specific training. I think it's Pam England, who is a birth worker. I think she might be a midwife, or I don't.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I'm happy to, if you want to, since I'm talking about it, if you want to have it in the show notes, I'm happy to provide a link
Yeah.
to
Send me
to
one.
my
Yep.
gal. And yeah, they go through extensive training, because it is trauma. It is such a like fragile and sensitive area that you want to make sure you have a really responsible guide. And yeah. So
Yeah.
speaking of feeling, I know I went into a lot there, but pregnancy was just so laden with, I would say, mental health trouble. And as someone who's no stranger to mental health struggles, I kind of expected that. But I think the part of the difficulty of pregnancy is that you have this baby growing inside of you, and it's also you that can be stressed and fearful. So part of my practice and my work was like letting myself feel my feelings, and also not living there, because I'm growing a baby and I
That's
don't want her.
hard.
Oh my goodness. It felt like I'm like hitting my hands against each other. It felt like this big juxtaposition of just a lot. But also
Yeah.
too, like when I, I told you I'm kind of late to the motherhood party, at least in my circle. And when I got pregnant and had her, I just wanted to like go and shake every mom I knew's hand. Like, oh my God, I had no idea you went through
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. No, you have no idea.
No.
Yeah.
People joke about the club. And I remember as a single person kind of rolling my eyes at that, like, okay, you guys can have your club. And it's like, well, you kind of do need that, because it is just this, such a unique experience. So
Yeah.
that's part of why I think what you're doing is so cool, because it's not only that being a mother is a unique experience, but also recognizing the difficulty and that you often feel like you're failing. Like
Yeah.
that's just such a gift to have that shared, oh, hey, you feel like this too, I think, for all of us as humans. So
Yes. Yeah. The more we can normalize that feeling, the more that we can actually focus on what matters and finding hope rather than beating ourselves up and feeling so alone, because our kids don't benefit when we are so in our heads about it. That's just not valuable time spent. So if we can just own the ways that we really feel like we're screwing it up, then we may be able to move forward into some solutions and get the help that we need if we do need help, because it's not a bad thing to ask for help when it comes to just needing support, needing mental health guidance, needing parenting help, all of the things. Asking for help is usually the best thing that you can do for not only yourself, but for your kids. So,
oh my gosh, yeah.
I am definitely passionate about that, because I
Which,
feel like
just
it
to
is
give like
the way.
adequate due, oh, sorry. I'm such a huge mental health advocate too. And during pregnancy, I was very much like butt in chair with my therapist. I had a coach. I've always kind of been like a overdoer when it comes to that stuff, but you're not supposed to do it alone. So not only is stuff like this so important, but having those professionals that you can talk to. And
Yes.
yeah. And just speaking of our kids, like, I think that not only is it nice for other moms I'm really lucky. I have, people around me that are like, if anything, they're like, oh my God, are you okay? Like, things suck sometimes, right? And so I'm pleasantly surprised that they don't all the time. Like, I've had some very real moms in my corner. That being said, I have to remind myself, and my daughter's very young, and I know things will change, and we'll see how this goes as she gets older. But I want her to see what it looks like to be imperfect. And I don't mean that I'm going to be some wreck out on the street with a bathrobe, like, I'm working on my mental health. But I do want her to see that, like, mom's going to fail sometimes. Mom's going to say things. Like, one of the most pivotal moments of my childhood that I remember, and I don't even remember what my mom did or what I did. Actually, I do. So I did something as a little girl, and my mom, I think she slapped me across the face. And we were children of the 80s. Like, we got spanked. It was not as big a deal then. We don't have to go into that.
Yeah.
But that being said, she never hit us on the face, and she felt terrible. And I remember her taking my like 5-year-old self, like, hands on shoulders, looking me in the eye and saying, Mom was wrong. I'm really sorry. I should not have done that. And just completely owning it. And
Mm.
and here I am, almost 36 years old. And it's like, that's what I remember is like my mom, she screwed up sometimes. And I don't intend to slap Tilly on the face. I don't intend to slap her at all.
Yeah.
But to know that one of the most profoundly changing or like lingering moments of my childhood was just my mom being imperfect and
Yeah.
owning it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I can vividly remember the time my dad sat on my bed and apologized to me. And it was like earth shattering because I was like, wait, what is happening right now? Is this a thing?
wait, dads apologize?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. What a gift.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And I don't even know what he was apologizing for. So that really does show the lasting effects of that relationship and how much more that means to our kids than the ways that we are failing in and of themselves.
Oh
That's
yeah,
really powerful.
totally. I remember like a friend worrying about her kids eating cereal for dinner once. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna tell you, my mom worked nights. She was a single parent. We ate cereal like all day, and that's not really what I remember at all. I remember that
No.
like I always felt safe and loved, and she was like at my plays, and just
Yeah.
it's like that stuff, which I'm sure I will feel bad about too. But this is good to remind each other of this stuff. So
Yes. Yes. There are bigger things, bigger damages that we can focus on with our kids and trying to do well. So
yeah,
let's circle back to you just had Tilly. What was like the postpartum period like for you?
yeah, it was really hard, and I know that that's not unusual, but I think if I look back at my brain, I'm really into mindset work. That's usually what I work with people on, is recognizing that the stuff we think all day is literally just words strung together. It's not the truth. So we
Mm,
can recognize these thoughts and like take them kind of apart and separate ourselves from them. But I bring that up to say, as a sober human being, I know the idea of one day at a time really well. That like that's how I got through sobriety. That's how I got through my mom's death. Is like I do not have to know all of this.
mm-hmm.
I don't have to figure out what to do next week or even tomorrow. Like just get through today. So I was practicing that while it was really hard. And at the same time in my brain was this idea that like, oh my God, it's always going to be this hard. I don't know why I thought I could do this. I was just crying all the time and
Mm-hmm.
so overwhelmed and so afraid. I was so, we talked about my pregnancy and the fear involved and then realizing that, as I think I've heard a lot of moms mention, suddenly you have this little baby that you're just supposed to keep alive. Like,
No
how am I
pressure.
supposed to do this? Yeah. It
Mm-hmm.
was just like, we don't like, it's a joke, but it's like, it feels like you should have more training or, so I felt very overwhelmed and I missed my mom so much because not only was she my mother, but she was also a nurse. And so as I'm caring for
Mm,
this tiny little baby, wishing I had the thing about mothers too, and I'll preface this by saying I know not everyone has this with their parent. I was very lucky to have one that no matter what was happening in my life, I could just be real with her. Like she was the one place, and you know the postpartum period where you don't have the
mm-hmm.
bandwidth to like put on a smile if you don't have one. You don't
Yeah.
have the bandwidth to even like I remember trying to draw a bath for myself because of course I had hemorrhoids because it's just like those are
Yep.
fun.
Yep.
And I didn't even have the energy to do that and I just sat there and cried and it hurt to sit and it's like there are very few people in our lives that at least for me I feel comfortable having in front of me at that moment.
Yeah.
And she was one of them. So not having her was really hard. And yeah, so I think that like when I think about that early time, if I could just offer anyone who might be there. And I do a lot of traversing to my past self and my future self. That's how I basically make decisions. How I forgive myself is like, recognizing I did what I could when I knew better, I do better kind of thing.
Yes.
But if I could offer her some solace, it would be like, it's not forever. Like, this is going to get easier. It feels so hard right now.
Mm-hmm.
But, even as I joked earlier about like mourning that loss of what I could have had, that's a very real thing. And I like to talk about that. But even as I say that, in early motherhood, it's like your love hasn't grown enough to cushion because the loss remains. I think with every choice we make, it's only truthful to say, well, there's that choice I didn't, right?
Yeah.
That being said, the choice that I made, I'm going to live here and I'm going to love her and I'm going to make the most of this, to oversimplify it. And as you do that and you really ground into what you did do, whether it's like a job choice or geographical choice or a baby, you inevitably, for me, grow this love and gratitude that is like, oh, this is exactly what my life is supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's a cool journey over there, not mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually a huge fan of like, whenever we have those road not taken fantasies, and like I said, I had one in early motherhood. For me, it's asking like, well, why did I want to drive through the country in an RV selling pies? Like, what is it about that I wanted? When really, Danielle, I don't even really like traveling that much, to be honest. Like, I love my home. I love security. And what I do love is adventure. And so bringing that in, it's like, I can integrate that adventure into my life right now. It doesn't mean I'm doing that thing, but all of these things that we're missing out on, like usually there are seeds of parts of our lives we want to grow or like integrate. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I can totally see that. Because you really do have to be where your feet are and be able to embrace all of the imperfections of like life is playing out as it should. And like sit with that truth of really feeling okay with what today looks like. And it is painful sometimes. Like it's not just like gratitude is not just like this calm over that makes everything feel right and good and happy at all.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And it totally shouldn't be. And I think that's why, as a life coach, I always joke, like whenever I picture, and I know you're a coach too. I think when people picture coaches, it's like we're all rah, yeah, life, positivity.
Everything's amazing.
Everything's great. And it's like, to me, like the best kind of coaching is really just the keys to the best kind of life. And that is just feeling it all and not trying to numb ourselves, right? Speaking to being a sober mom, it's like in those early days of having all that pain, oh my God, it was so uncomfortable. And I felt it all. And I'm not going to say I didn't stuff my face with Oreos every chance I could. Like, I did not do things perfectly. But I think that, as a coach and as a human, recognizing that we're supposed to really sit with the like heaviness, like of missing my mom. I am supposed to sit with that. And also, that's how I feel like the extreme joy, right? I think on the flip side of all these lows we can get to in motherhood, allowing ourselves to go there without numbing is also the way we can get to the other side. So feeling it all, man.
Hey friend, I see you. You're trying so hard to parent as intentionally and calmly as you can, but you feel like a failure on the daily. You beat yourself up and you ruminate over all the times you lost it on your kids, knowing that's not how you want to be. Maybe your past is creeping up on you, or the stress of life is overtaking you, but it's not okay. You're tired of it. You're tired of all the yelling, dreading time together, and just wanting to get away. You wish you knew how to better get your kids to listen, to stop all the fighting, the aggression, the frustration, but yelling is still the only way you can get their attention. And then beat yourself up for it. Let's stop this cycle altogether. It's possible to enjoy your kids and for them to enjoy being with you. Spoiler alert, they don't like getting yelled at. They don't like getting disciplined all the time. They're tired of it too. If you are ready to admit what you're doing isn't working, let's talk. Schedule a free call to see what's possible for your family. We'll chat about the struggles you're experiencing and decide together if we'd be a good fit to work together. Here's what I know to be true. You are a good mom and you're doing your best. Your kids are good kids and they are doing their best. If you're still having problems, there's just missing tools, skills, and a disconnect. All things that are fixable. There is so much hope, my friend. Schedule a free call today and set your family's trajectory on a new path starting tomorrow. I can't wait to cheer you on. And I know you wrote to me before that you felt like motherhood was harder than getting sober. Talk to me about that.
Oh my gosh. It's funny because I always thought, I think that wherever we're at, we're like, oh my gosh, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. But kind of like in school, as you keep going through grades, things do get harder because you're like up leveling. And this is like a very big thing to say, because I'm going to go to to me, part of the point of life is to keep up leveling and to keep feeling more and to keep growing yourself and becoming, more attuned to your inner peace, regardless of what's happening. And so the more you're doing that, and the fact of life is that it remains difficult and things blindside you, or you choose things like becoming a mother that are still very difficult. I don't know. I feel like it's not coming out of my mouth as well as it is in my head, but it's like, as I've progressed more, things have just gotten harder. Yeah. So to become a mom and also too, getting sober was just about me. I mean, as I say that, there were a lot of people I hurt. There were a lot of people that benefited from me not being an addict anymore. The world, I know in general, benefits when people get sober, but still, it was my journey. So when you get sober, and just in general, it's good to kind of take a look at your fears and your parts of your character that aren't necessarily working. And I remember I've just never had any trouble doing that. There's some really dark parts of myself that, because I'm willing to look at them, I'm able to grow. And I bring that up because becoming a mother, I have never not been able to say what I'm afraid of until I was pregnant. And I was so afraid of really pregnancy loss. That was basically what it was. But I couldn't even write about it. I couldn't even talk about it. And that showed me, whoa, this is bigger. This love, this situation, this isn't just, even like I said, losing the person closest to me at that point, this is bigger than all of that. I officially, oh my gosh, I'm the grown up. And this fear that I have isn't just for me, this is for someone else. And so I think
the stakes are higher almost.
Yeah, totally. The stakes were so much higher. And still are, but thankfully, as things have gone, I've sort of, I will continue to do this, develop tools around it, and ways to deal with the fact that you love this being or multiple beings, like someone like yourself that has more than one child, so much. And also, you might also love your mental health and not want to be in a constant state of this thing I love could be hurt, or constant anxiety.
Yeah. And there's so much about motherhood that is two conflicting emotions at once, such incredible love, but then also so much grief and loss, and you have to feel both, and it makes you feel like a crazy person a lot of the time because you can't verbalize it, and you have to reason it out with another mom that gets it. But what has helped you in the last year to survive? What has been the key mindset shifts that you've really had to undergo and put into practice?
Yeah. Well, I guess it kind of goes along with the speaking of feeling two big things at once. When I was in new motherhood, and I know that I'm still in new motherhood. I'm a somewhat new mother. I'm in the first year, but especially in the early days, I know if you're listening and you're a mom, then you have heard, oh my goodness, the time goes by so fast. Appreciate every moment. Yes. And you hear that about 10,000 times a day, right? Through well-meaning old ladies at the store back when we were allowed to be in public, or on social media. And as someone that was always very sensitive and very, dare I say, nostalgic, I've always kind of mourned my former selves. And so realizing, oh my gosh, she's only going to be this little once. I better just stare at her, or she's going to grow, because she does just grow that fast. And she does, right? The difference between a newborn and a 1-year-old is so different. It's so drastic.
Oh, it's insane.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I just felt this intense pressure to what I don't know, to stop time, to put it all in a bottle and wait until I was really present and able to appreciate it. So as you ask, what I've learned, I have made this deal. I talked about my future and my past selves, and I'm not just totally crazy. I've got these sort of a future self that is kind of my guide, and this wiser kind of inner crone that's just doesn't give a, can we cuss on this podcast?
Yeah.
She doesn't
Please
give
do.
a fuck anymore. She's just like, at the end of life, and there's lots of reasons I turn to her, but one of them is because what I don't want to be is full of regret. And I know that you and I talked
Mm-hmm.
briefly before this about just how important that is, that like we don't want to regret stuff. And so the short version of this is that every day, and I've done this, I think until around when she was about maybe a month old, but every day I spend at least like 15 minutes, which is not that much time, but just
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes just being with her, just putting time in the bank of I was here. Like I was here. I loved her. I appreciated this moment, this little baby, when she's a teenager and mouthing off, or when she's in her 30s and like across the country, or whatever could happen in the future. We never know.
Mm-hmm.
I promise my future self that's going to say, God, that was such a good time. And I wasted it with poor mental health, or I wasted it. I'm really passionate about what I do professionally. So I spend a lot of time working on my business and writing. And it's very easy for the guilty conscience in me to go, you're wasting time. Like you should be with Tilly right now. And it's like, for one, I think the worst burden we can put on our kids is an unlived life. So I'm not going to do that to Tilly.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
secondly, I do spend, and 15 minutes might sound like I spend most of the day with her, but just having that time, I would say that's how I nurtured the mom part of me that just really wants to know I did the best I could. And I actually do
Yeah.
affirmations every day around lots of areas. I have them recorded on my phone and I'll just listen while I shower. And one of them is like, I know that I did the best I could when Tilly was a baby, which is such a simple idea. But
Mm-hmm.
just knowing that is so freeing because I remember it every day.
Huge.
And
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yes. That's really all we want to know at the end of the day. It really is. Like, we just want to be able to say, I did my best.
Yeah.
And having the grace for when we look back and say, oh, well, we could have or should have or would have. And just saying, like, I took the information I had at the time and I made the best decisions I could with that information. And now I know more information, so I'm going to make different choices. And that's okay.
Oh my gosh. That really is like the most freeing thing we can do. And that's in motherhood, in
Mm-hmm.
our health. I remember there was like this joke about eggs that like at one point eggs were like really unhealthy and you shouldn't eat them. And then they were like the miracle food and you should only eat eggs. And then it was like, well, eggs in moderation. And I don't even eat eggs. I'm like a plant-based eater, but I bring that up to say like there's going to be changing information, both
Yes.
personally and culturally and kind of with this pandemic. I know we're all in the middle of different stages, different mental health stages of like how we're feeling. And for
And there's
one,
no right.
remembering
There's no right way to do
totally,
anything.
yes, there is no one right. Yeah, yeah. And
Which is
I guess
aggravating.
constantly like reminding ourselves of that because
Yes.
that's the beauty of having other people and other resources that aren't in your head
Mm-hmm.
to be like, there is no one right way to do this. Even when it comes, even when it comes to parenting, of course, when it comes to parenting, because there's so many opinions. And
Yes.
I also too, I remember in early motherhood, I had a lot of moms, once again, well-meaning, reaching out and saying, you know what, I wish I'd done X, Y, Z. Insert more time spent here, more emphasis on music, whatever. Some of it was like cognitive, some of it was just more
Mm-hmm.
skin to skin time. It was all very well-meaning.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, information overload. I
Yep.
had crazy hormones. I could not even think straight. I was not able to think very clearly. And so just that reminder of like, I'm doing the best I can. And
Mm-hmm.
when I know more, when I know better, I will do better
Yeah.
because more isn't always better.
No.
Yeah.
When I have more
Yeah.
capacity, maybe, then I'll be able
Yeah.
to take on more things. But yeah, it's okay. Whatever you're doing right now is exactly probably what your baby needs.
Especially for anyone listening to a podcast like this, because I don't get the feeling you have moms who are just like, I don't care. My kid's home
No.
by herself. Or like, like if you're putting effort into really trying to make a decision. I actually have a good friend who just had to put her dog to sleep. And that is a really big,
Mm,
very heavy. She has kids, considering the
yeah.
family and the fact that dogs can't talk. And I bring that decision up because that's like, there is no right way, but
Yeah.
recognizing that you're doing the best you can with the information that you have and then just giving yourself that grace to make a decision,
Mm-hmm.
that's everything. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but
We right now that has relevance in my mind because we are trying to think about what the next school year is going to look like, which is a huge toss up. Like there's so many unknowns related to that decision of what is best for our kids, and like public school and masks and like tuition and just all the things of homeschooling goods and bads. And so we're just trying to throw around these giant decisions, not really having any clue what the world will look like in this next year, because COVID could go away or COVID could get way worse. And like, there's just a million conflicting opinions. So it feels very high stakes to try to make this decision now with not feeling like we have all the information. Like you want to have the most informed, educated decision when it comes to these big things that happen in our kids' lives. But there's never a guarantee. There's never like okay, here you go. If you just like follow this formula, then you're going to come to like some perfect scenario. It's just not. And it's aggravating because it'd be so much easier if it did. But we just have to trust our instincts and trust that we're the expert of our kids, at least. And we can use that information for good. But it's always going to be hard. And we're going to have to keep up leveling, which means we're going to keep facing adversity.
And I love that you tied in the quarantine and the pandemic and all of that, because in a lot of ways, I think this has really amplified already existent issues for any of us.
Yeah.
Whether it was like the need to plan or relationship issues or comparative suffering stuff or whatever it is. And I do want to share something that, for one, I'm struggling right along with you, right? Because we don't have a script for this. And it's really nice to have, even when we talk about getting sober or losing a parent or becoming a mother, we can look to other people and be like, what did you do? What worked for you, in the responsible, loving collecting of resources? And like, nobody has a script for this. We don't know how it's going to turn out. And something I like to come back to a lot, and something I really help people to do, is it can be difficult to tease apart, like, what is my inner voice from the noise of even too much information? It could be like research I read. It's not necessarily your judgy neighbor. It can be something that feels very responsible to listen to. But how do I tease that apart from like my, you said, listen to your gut. And I know we all have different paths to that. And something that I am huge on is meditation and journaling and prayer. I know sometimes God can throw people into like all sorts of preconceived notions, but for me, it's like asking for guidance, writing. I do 3 pages stream of consciousness every morning, which is a lot as a new mom, but it's like getting the crap out of my head, because Anne Lamott, the author, calls it unclogging the toilet. And when you do that, it sounds like the toilet is where we get all our ideas. Maybe I'm misusing that metaphor. But unclogging the like attunement, right? Let's say tuning your antenna and then getting quiet for like even 5 minutes. And once again, I know moms are listening. I know it can feel like I don't have an hour. I don't have 10 minutes. And I think that frenzy that comes along with not identifying our voice is more harmful to our mental health than just finding that time somehow and, making that a priority.
You're so right. You're so right. Yeah.
Make you a priority. I think I come back to that because, once again, I come from like a Jewish family. There's a lot of Jewish guilt. And like the part of me that's like, oh my gosh, like you can't take time for yourself. Like your kids will suffer. And it's like, wait, no, my kid will suffer if I am completely focused on her and don't, and neglect my mental health, my physical health, my whatever. So it's not like I'm all balanced. Don't get it wrong, you guys. But definitely an intention. So I hope that helps. Is prayer, meditation, journaling, super helpful tools.
Yes. No, that's great advice. And if you can do it, everybody can do it, because the baby life is demanding for sure. So being able to carve out any time for yourself, you have added guilt, but it's so necessary that we do prioritize that space, because we could be spending that time with our kids, but is that really of the most value for them in that moment? Over the long term, probably not. So that's really good clarity. So tell us more about what you do right now and how moms can find you and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So I am a life coach. I work with women mostly, but I do work with the occasional man if he fits into this sort of like area, and I work with women on really recognizing all of the different ways we have lived in cages our whole life, like whether it's about how we look, how we parent, how we feel about ourselves, our professional life, our creative lives, and just kind of help people to recognize that like none of that is true, that we're all living in this cultural paradigm of kind of like the Matrix, like we don't realize it, but we're in the Matrix that's told us what success looks like, what we should look like, how we should feel. So yeah, I help people unlearn. That's kind of how I think of it. I'm an unlearner or an unteacher. Untamer is the word that I use. And yeah, and I was just telling you before we started, I've been working on a course that really just helps people to step out of these cages in general and apply it to any part of their life. But I've realized this huge need in the area of social media because I have a lot of clients and friends that like in this time where we can't really be together, more than ever, we're all living online and in this digital space. But there's a lot of toxicity in the relationships. And I get it because I've totally been there where I used to like, and this was even before the pandemic, before all of the political, like everything happening culturally in the last like 6 years. But this love-hate relationship where I would like love it because I wanted to connect with people and then hate it because I'd wasted too much time, or I felt like people were being fake or I was being fake. And then I'd delete it for like a year. And then I'd be like, oh, I'm so cool for not being on social media. But then I totally miss people. So anyway, if anyone has this messed up relationship and would like to fix it, I have very simple tools that I have put together, this little mini course that you can take to having a good relationship with it, not having to delete it, not wasting too much time with it, and not having the crappy mindset stuff too, because there's a lot of, I don't even want to say negativity. I think there's a lot of negativity if we're not being like, if I'm being fair, but there's a lot of big, heavy stuff happening in the world that it can be really difficult to look at and also maintain your mental health and also figure out where the line is between engaging and being too silent and making all of these decisions. Like, yeah, there's a lot. So if you'd like help with that, please come follow me. You can find me at my podcast specifically is Follow Your Fire. And then my website, followyourfirecoaching.com. And then, yeah, I write weekly, just a little blog that is usually helpful tips. I'll include the podcast in every week. So if you want to subscribe, I think we're going to have it in the show notes.
Yep.
So that's really the best place to get in touch with me is because I'm always writing on the weekly blog. But yeah, I would love to connect with the mamas out there that were listening.
Yes. Well, I'll be the first one in line to sign up because I think we all have pretty messed up relationships with social media, but business makes it even worse because there's so much of that tied to your success as well. So it's such a necessary evil. But I love that you're finding resources and ways that we can combat that because we can't just ignore it and it's not going to go away. It's a huge part of life. So we need tools and we need a coach. So I'm so glad that you're in that space and you're doing your thing. And happy birthday to Tilly.
Aww, thank you.
Yes. And happy sobriety. Keep it up. I know how hard it is. We have that story in my family as well. But there's just so much growth and so much wisdom that I'm sure you can share with your clients from what you've learned through your own story. And I'm just so grateful for the time that you're able to share with us today.
Thank you so much. And thank you for what you're putting out into the world. It's so necessary, as I said, I think the vulnerability and kind of leveling, like, hey, let's level with each other. This is how it is. It's just so needed right now. So thank you for all that you're doing.
No, it's my pleasure. Melissa had so much good advice to share in this one, you probably can't soak it all up in one listen. Always and of course, please remember, you are the mom that your kids need. Next episode, you'll get to hear from Bebita Spinelli, a renowned psychotherapist and divorce coach. She's here to talk about all the pain and failure and hardship the divorce process burdens families with and shares so much good advice. Now, are you sick of arguing with your spouse about discipline? Are you sick of beating yourself up for yelling? I can help. Coaching allows us the opportunity to talk through everything, problem solve new solutions, and provide the support and accountability for you to make the changes and see the changes. Go to parentingwholeheartedly.com/coaching to learn more and schedule a free call today. Thanks for coming on this journey with me. I believe in you, and I'm cheering you on.